Yes, getting everything together. Glory to the Most High God, who cuts and clear all dark vibration as we set the right energy, lights, camera, action. Well, this is the great old Jerome C.H. Butler and the 18th Assembly. Big up Dub Master Lynch, rest in power. Babylon think them a get way, but them can't get way. Oh yeah. Babylon. Oh yeah. I'm tired of all the war. Women selling themselves like whores. The price of war. Some will die and many more. And many more. I know one day peace and love. This world will fade away. Yeah. I know one day one nation. Babylon will pay for the pain and suffering that it's causing. Yeah, we will all break away. Babylon will pay. Babylon have the most dope a pum. Inna them car with the smoke a chum. Babylon have the most dope a pum. Inna them car with the smoke a chum. Babylon a come with them interview, and you don't know say Babylon no into you. Hello. Men with them Catholic. No love the roots man with the ease off. Yes. Before we squeeze off, yes, blessings and welcome to Reasonings right here at the Tree of Life. While we get it right, yes, setting the mood right. Ain't nothing wrong with adjusting the frequency and the focus. Blessing once again. Welcome forward to Reasonings right here at the Tree of Life here on Tree of Life Television Network. And currently this offering is going to be around climate change or environmental damage and degradation. Climate change has become a catchphrase that has been bound up in the argument of the age, and most individuals who are exposed to the information and the well presented and very palatable argument of climatic change, its recurrent effect upon the environment and the individuals, the culture and services, even the nation states within particular regions of the earth. And it's easy to see, most would say, how could you not understand clearly the argument? Because obviously humans are destroying our environment through the use of fossil fuels. This heavy fossil fuel based society is letting monotoxins into the atmosphere, biocarbons, artificial biocarbons that are totally destroying the atmosphere, the quality of our air and water. And we're all in a pickle and a bind. And so we all have to change. And it makes perfect sense. So why is there all this little smoke screen and sleight of hand around the argument? And you might say, great Al, there is no argument. As you say, we humans are destroying the environment through fossil fuel based economies and industries. So we're going green, vegan, yay. I got my pronoun. What? I said pronounce? Oh no, you said pronoun. So what does pronoun? Oh, you need to lay out your preamble. So here's my preamble. Climate change and gender and human relation. Climate change and gender and human relations. Climate change and economy. Climate change and political philosophy. Climate change and religiosity. Climate change and individual liberties. I know I kind of befuddled on one of them there, double clutch myself there. So I think I need to calm down, give thanks to the Most High. Yes, the essence is climate change and gender relation. Climate change and gender politics, because they're two different things.
because I'm not going to start there, but I come to that. Climate change as a philosophy. And before I even get into my argument, I just want to make note that I started out with a song. It's a new project I'm working on because I did a previous video and I was talking about creativity, and I kind of had a freestyle that I have on my SoundCloud on there, and some of the, I guess some individuals were kind of offset by the fact that it was so rough, and so I said I can show them, I share with them something that I'm working on that is also rough, but is more harmonious and can fit to an argument. And so Babylon will pay is the base of the argument, and you're saying, how does Babylon will pay relate to what you're saying as it relates to climate change, right? So let me just lay out Babylon according to our culture, Rastafari, the culture of people in Jamaica, is from the Bible, and Babylon is the Sumerian Empire, which is a precursor to the Egyptian Empire, the Grecian Empire, the Roman Empire, and the British and the American, the stages that we took politically as kingdom status to get to where we are currently. So we say Babylon would have to pay because they created a philosophy and a way of life, and we're under their culture and their cultural norms, and those cultural norms influence how we look at all the arguments, because then we go into their institutions to be, educated in their linguistical merits and their angst, their nuances, and their worldview. So that's how we come up with our political and religious view. And now you can see our gender views. Now you can see how the argument comes back to climate change. Climate change is an argument mainly promoted by Western countries, are the most powerful nations in the world, where, as I said earlier, they claim that basically our carbon-based, our fossil fuel-based economies and the culture that is spawned around it is basically permanently changing the climate. Because if you're going to talk about climate change, you first will have to establish that the climate is fixed. Now, the fixed or the idea of a rigid climate is kind of strange to me, but I think they have these so-called norms of once in 1,000, once in 100, and they're just ideological points along a thought process to deal with how climate reacts over calm periods of time, where you can basically measure, reasonably well with a few degree of difficulty the atmospheric changes over vast, space of land and its effect upon the individual. So you can have slight modules, but modules are always changing because years are always comparatively different. It's like, let's use China for instance. Last year China was going through the worst flooding, first once in a 100 year, and they said that so much times the Yangtze River and the Mekong River, and they're about to burst the three gorges. They did that propaganda, and then this year the propaganda is, oh, the Yangtze is almost dry, the Mekong is drying up, and the tributaries are drying up on the lowest level in a century, and it's just all these political statements along the climate change argument, right? And nature is a cyclical system. As much wet is as much dry. Wet seasons, dry seasons, the so-called El Nino, La Nina, that was the first implementation of the ideology of climate change into our perception. Areas that were once dry will become wet. Areas that was once warm will now become cold. Listen, people, there's a cyclical movement of climate based upon greater geothermic activities up in the atmosphere, what we call, and the stratus and the metas, which we call the cosmic condition that affect weather patterns, right? And there's also the terrestrial activities we do. Yes, which one would be the fossil fuels, no one can deny that. But there's other things we do, which I will get to, which creates environmental damage and destruction versus the climate change ideology, which again is framed in an argument by powerful countries, and it comes with economic sanctions, and it has gender issues and social policies mixed into the aid, into the ideology, and into the tinkering of perception that comes with this climate change ideology. They got pronouns in there and things that relate to things which are not actually a part of the ethnic or indigenous experience of the people of several of these regions that have been targeted by the climate change activists about how things are going to be for the years to come and how these societies now are under threat, not from the invasion of their privacy and the invasion of their sanctity by being forced into a world's idea based upon the powerful. No, that's not what's seeking them. What's seeking them is their culture of being subsistence farmers, of burning firewood and coal to survive. They vilify the Aboriginal people, the people who they have disenfranchised for centuries by again using these political philosophies backed by force of armament to dispossess millions of people from the land. So now we set out the political philosophy around climate change. Let's look at the gender philosophy because again, as I said, in the same argument, there is this protection for all these genders and agendas that are starting as subtext within societies that have kept identities based upon their own development through time and space. And it's not based upon admiralty perception of invaders from the sea. It's common law. It's autochthonous. It's of the land. And so that is being skewered by the perception of the invader who has force of armament and economic sanctions and power and gifts to manipulate the ideology of young, unsuspecting minds through propaganda, through mass media and culture, right, to the popularization of their culture, the cultural imperialist view of crushing the autochthonous view of one's perception. All of a sudden, we are cosmogonists, not cosmologists anymore. We are subhuman subtext. We are just some grouping that are inferences by powerful design mechanisms, right? And that's what we call now the thought police, the word police now. The narrative police begins to tell you who you are in the greater scheme because they control the cycles of the greater scheme. And these design systems are what is enshrined in these gender pronouns to subdivide and control, cause disarray. Because this is when now you can control, because the young's minds are taking over. So now you have a direction you can lead their thought processes, their economic will and power to serve a system which says, hey, welcome, you're here. You're not welcome, dear, come here. Come and serve us. And so now climate change philosophy is promoted along this lifestyle. And we're going to go green, we're going to go healthy. And the people promote green and healthy and their lives matter and things. It's gender issues that are being attached to environmental damage issues that are being attached to political imperialism, cultural imperialism issues, identity and gender politics issues, yes, and all of these left and rightist ideas of the Marxists and the this and the that flowing into the lives of Aboriginal people, of people all across the planet that literally have been disenfranchised by industries for centuries and is now again the little sway of land that you have to chop your little firewood because you're not on the gas, you're not on the grid. They're now coming for you, and when they can no longer get you on their solar this or the wind this or the wind farm, they wean you off, and now you become the targets of new ideology. Now you're not compliant, and again, these powerful oligarchs, they're buying up vast swathes of land, right? And they are changing the political structure in the society to support their ideal. Now it's in the ministries of government, and now they're having new tagline because the narrative is changing. Narrative is no longer autochthonous, aboriginal, indigenous. The narrative is admiralty, it's international, it's globalist, it's taken on a new aura to it, right? And this is the essence of what is happening under this climate change philosophy and this climate change ideology. But we can look at what's really happening. What are we really doing? Let's look at environmental damage. Environmental damage is carried out not just by vast industries, by a lot of governments as well, who toxify sources of fresh water, right, by doing experiments. Because, as in, if you got lots of access to resources and the brain power, you're curious, and your curiosity will lead you to explore things. But sometimes the exploration get a little greedy, and they discover things, and because of their economic mind space, they're not touching us. They're not for the well-being of their people. It's economic. They do damage to environmental the environment itself, right? But to the environmental resources, the things that replenish nature, they go and they find that, oh, currently scientific researchers find out that within a certain sea moss, there's a regenerative property that can help humans regrow a part of, scar tissue or whatever. And so now they go and they try to harvest and they destabilize an ecosystem, right? And remove some of the feeders to the balance within the ecology. And it doesn't take immediate effect, but slowly over time, the death of this algae and the death of the ecosystem eventually comes back around through their environmental damage. They meddle. It was not about just fossil fuels. It's that you meddle. You know by your smarts and your knowledge, do not mind here, but here you said, oh, I find this great nickel, this great cobalt, a different kind of, natural ore property, and now we're gonna drill. Previously we drilled 4,000. Now we're gonna drill 6,000 feet below the earth now, because now we're gonna have to go get this, and we need greater drills, and so greater and greater environmental damage happens that is destabilizing the terrestrial nature of our existence, because everything is harmonization of frequency. Nothing is just in a vacuum. Life is not in a vacuum. So it's not just that, oh, we are removing fossil fuel, which, by the way, it is replenishable, and a lot of people do not want to know that the so-called fossil fuel that is limited, it's regenerable, and it's regenerative rather. And there's lots of studies which know that it's regenerative, so it's not limited, right? What is limited is the will to not have an economic module that's based upon competition design reality. That's what's the real issue. To really decide not to have an economic module, to have a module like Jack, I forgot what Jack's last name is, once said that society that's truly harmonious, that's truly serving the circular nature of life, that we all recognize the necessities of each other within this living planetary system, and be able to harmonize at the optimum level of planetary habitation and harmonization. That would be the real direction in which we should take. However, the economic module has us to compete, right, and expropriate and exploit the environment, right, at the behest, at the expense of all those who cannot protect themselves, which is the majority of people, for economic gain, and then create a philosophy that says, oh, it's all of us. So now people feel guilty to drive their cars, to operate late, machinery late at night, things that they say consume lots of energy. They got to say you're going green, they got to changing to fluorescent and all this green energy revolution. But all of these holiday revolutions are just another economic module being engineered into the system. Now, I've studied social engineering. I've spent time understanding. I'm not putting myself up for office in any sense, because the truth of wisdom versus the application of it is two different things. I am not on an economic based module for the experience of life and the resources we design from the experience of life. However, that doesn't stop the greater system from being designed that way. The fact that it is designed that way is why we're in issue all the time, because as it relates to religious viewpoint as well too, it goes into affecting people's perception of God. Because what happens is it starts a religious war now, because as they put in the pronouns and stuff, now there's going to be a war to defend the territory of nature versus science, versus the scientific mind and its perception of literally changing food from biological organisms and biological matter to a synthetic chemical and human made matter, human made product, not something that is organic. So when you say food in the narrative and copyright understanding, food will literally be what is copywritten to have ownership, patent ownership. That's what I mean, right? Patent ownership versus saying, I went to pick a fruit, an orange. Is the fruit you're picking a registered trademark, a patent of a multinational? Then the natural subsistence of nature is changed. So if your food comes straight from designed reality farms, industrial farms, then food is not organic. Food is a man-made product. Think I'm joking? Go look on your supermarket shelves and tell me what is called food. Come to an indigenous society and see what is called food. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. Come to an indigenous society and see what we call food versus what is called food in the modern society. So the climate change philosophy, ignoring environmental damage by big industry pumping ammonia and a whole lot of chemicals. I can't name them all, right? It's a lot to remember. Into the water source, emitting them into the atmosphere. Why is that being done? To fill quotas for economic standard of living that comes at the expense of destroying nature. And then the people who are hooked, just like a drug, and the lifestyle, they're not the one that's cooking it, and that's not the one that's cutting it, and that's not the one that's selling it. They're the one that's hooked on it. They are now being called a problem. They're being rounded up and thrown into a sty. Now, few is being kept clean so they can continue to serve the masters. Now, if I was being told this is the way to live, I wouldn't want to live that way. But I've come to recognize this is how life is. And this is where it affects religious choices now. Because now if you get very religious and say, I'm not into this and I believe this, now you're going to be branded a religious lunatic and a fanatic who obviously does not know how to articulate reality clearly enough to discern between science not being in conflict with God. But a lot of times science is in conflict with God and nature. Because if it's unethical, it is in conflict with God and our nature. So science in of itself cannot substantiate itself. The human conscience is supposed to substantiate it. And the human conscience is substantiated by its creator. And that is sacred and sacrosanct to an individual, not to the opinion of mass design narrative that will attack religious rights and freedom when they come against the narrative, right, of this climate change in gender politics and in gender relations. So I looked at gender politics, looked at gender relations now, how they now segregate men and women along the pathway of no longer respecting traditional relationship, because traditional relationship is man exerting power, and traditional relationship also go back to religious view of man being the head of the household, if you understand as well too. So you see what I'm saying, right? So now they're saying no. This adjustment in narrative is saying no, man cannot be the head of woman. Who gives man the right to be the head of anything? A woman is earning her own money and she can do this and she can do that. She's equal to the man. And no one in the old module had questioned a woman's equality to a man. The question is about function as gender and nature and culture as recognized most efficient. How women and men operate within the context of the family and the greater context of community and society, nation state. The experience thereof of the heterogeneous nature of life. A woman has skills that are best expressed in certain manner because it brings out a quality that reverberates with the nature of how the man expresses. That the male child has good example in the man and the female child has good example in the woman, and see the reference points of gender in father and brother, mother and sister. This is the dynamic of the traditional family being lost by the new families of many genders, many agendas, many pronouns, many designs on the whole climatic. Let's go green, let's be vegan, let's be so cool, we fill ourselves with aberrations and feel that we are the wisest people on earth because we're so above the cattle and the sheep that don't know what's going on. But those who are supposed to know what's going on are increasing the damage and destruction, even the psychic body, in that how they even emit. If you truly want to help others, emit good vibrations because you recognize, okay, you see what's going on. Use your mind, use your spirit, use your wits. If you're not conceited and caught up in the crap that you're spinning, you will help people. You will, hallelujah, help people. If your faith is in the living God, you will maintain your religious faith and your religious integrity and speak truth with deep understanding. I don't just flip these things because, oh, I think I'm smart. I spend time, hallelujah, and I process and I look at things, right? So people might attack me for, how dare you say this and this that, against you know brilliant minds of Harvard or whoever has made these great statements about gender rights. And who are you to think? Listen, tradition bears me witness. The intent and the argument presented is from a clear perceptive mind, which is my own. And I'm not saying you is me and I am you. If we are, it is philosophical. In actuality, you is an entity that houses yourself within your own perceptivity and actuality, likewise myself. So, that being cleared up, I can see, and I'm not going to be swayed by the climate change politicizing of an ideology, even the trading of carbon tax, where some nations say, oh, I have lower carbon emissions, so I can sell you a percentage of right to pollute, right? So I can trade in this carbon tax. It's a regulatory system that it's another economic module. It's all theoretic, which most of the design economics are. It's not in the actuality of the function of the society, because it's admiralty. It's not common law. It's not law of the land. So they don't really care about how it comes back to be of benefit to the people on the land. So most of the ideas that they design in these politicization of their idea is about expropriating value from the society. It's about getting you on board. If they want to donate to a cause within your society, all of a sudden there's guidelines and stipulations, and the stipulations and the guidelines promote a certain behavior and a certain way of thinking, which is wearing more relatable to their way of life. And so you lose cultural identity, you lose religious identity, and you lose political will, because now you're a part of all these trilateral, multilateral EPAs and economic partnership agreement. You're part of all of these processes, right, that are now confusing your choices, because now you're thinking, how do I compete in the corporation status of nation states, right? Because if I go outside of the guidelines and the ISOs and the things that define trade, where am I? So you find that most nations, without true backbone, without true connection to ancestry, they just basically dive into the New World Order. And so the ideologies that are presented, people are going with it because there's money behind it. People don't just promote things without basically promoting. They pay their pundits to represent their point of views and to popularize their way of life. So again, there's a movement around climate change and green, negating environmental damage, negating the responsibility of these governmental ministries and organizations that basically are exploring in places that they should not be exploring, building new developments, committing land to commercial development that is not safe to build on. It's not healthy for the ecology of the entire nation state. It will destabilize something outside of the human social system, because there's animal social system, there's environmental vibratory social systems, right, which is off balance by explorations and basically disruption of their habitat, right? It's not just the plant habitat, right? There's the geothermal habitats, right? How places gather water, elements, minerals, and it's like it's a substation. Everything you see as a module that humans do because they're conceited, it's from the earth. The geothermal activity of, say, we bring the water here and it's coming from 8 different cities here and here at the major sewage station. We've got 1,000 turbines cleansing water and sending it to 3,000, 4,500 miles away, all the way in New Mexico. Listen, people, that is designed for the natural systems of how water is distributed in the aquifers and the underground geothermal systems of nature. And so when they go and they put drills in there and they're expropriating mineral and they're taking the sweet water out and they're building this thing so that they can compete for the water, and nowhere in the world is this, and they're building these human installations around there, right? And they're staking their flags on it, right? And they're destroying the environment. And that's what's causing things to go toxic. That's what's causing it. It's not just fossil fuel, right? And the philosophy is to cover it up in these climate change, to change behaviors, right? To dispossess people, and yet come and take more of people's lands, more of their opportunities, right? And bundle it into first, second, and third world status in the pyramid scheme of their reality. And people might say, well, what are we going to do about it? First of all, think, read, act for yourself upon the knowledge, the gnosis you're experiencing for yourself. People like me are prompters, like others have prompted us in our awareness and our gnosis, our knowledge, to seek for ourselves to understand what's going on. Why does aid come with these criteria? Aid, which is first in the first place, becomes necessary because, again, multinationals over centuries, like the East India Corporation, yeah, and the British West India Company, had expropriated indigenous minerals, material resources, right, and has waxed rich from it, impoverished us, and now saying that, oh, we're going to be doing these trade agreements and you're going to get some aid to lift up your economies. You literally created a condition that's there, and that's the truth. And they're cold about it. And their economic module, well, there's no law that says, it's like tax avoidance and tax evasion. It's just these little sleight of hands and the legalisms that they create within their admiralty law, right, to avoid consequences and justice and the lawful treatment of indigenous or Tatinus people, the man, woman, child upon the land. I survived the great deep to be birthed upon the land. I am a Moor upon the land, right? And as such, I deserve respect according to the laws of my condition. I do not fly in the upper atmosphere, neither do I swim in the deep. I survived that deep. Yeah? I'm not a tadpole. I'm a Moor. Do you understand? I do not breathe with tubes. I'm not an astronaut, people. You got to know yourself, because if you do not know yourself, you will not be able to order the cosmos according to the right of your person. Because that's what they're doing. They're subverting your right like an X2 agreement PS 127 on the docket, going to the local. They take your power and add it to nonsensical and change the narrative and say, yes, you agree. They did not agree because you didn't even know what you were agreeing to. Sign away your rights. And cosmic law says you must know what's going on. So the essence is ignorance will not get them to win. So they have to tell you what's going on. Right? So you not being aware means they cannot pull the wool over your eyes. But they're telling you what's going on and you're not caring. So you're seeing that the gene altering technology is happening. The gene altering philosophies are happening. And the word prophetically that is there, that is a Biblos, the Bible, many don't like it. It's there. Many of the book speaks to the augmentation of our reality and the time of augmentation, the Kurljas, when things go in the cycles of Genesis and regenesis, reset and reset, set and reset. We're up a time where it's being called upon for us to make decisions that are wholesome with true knowledge and power, because now it's the most critical point in the shift of greater awareness. And this is what we must become cognizant of. Be careful of these philosophies. Be careful that by your way of life, you are not in sync with self-destructive ways. And that way is modernism, right? Constructive way, like traditional family, like traditional perception, which will also be codified as religious perception. That's what you're going to call a religious fanatic. And people who hold that philosophy will call nationalists or aggressive state or successionist states or whatever, right? So they got all the philosophies for it, right? And a man who stands up for his family, as how it is said, is going to be called a religious fanatic because you said, I am the head of my family according to how nature and God and creation made me. And the postman is gonna say, no, the woman, she earns this and she's that, right? And they'll destabilize your family based upon ideology. They destabilize your family from 100 miles away, from 1,000 miles away, broadcasting on these networks, on these systems, and that's how they get in. That's how they creep in. Oh, we'll give you $500 million to to help with the conditions of your youth. But you're gonna have to have gay, bisexual, and lesbian and gender equality issues and the pronouns and the this and the that and the him and the her and the this and the that added to the argument because you are disenfranchised. No, or people are not disenfranchised because of lack of sexual liberty. They are disenfranchised because of lack of economic liberties, which is connected again to elitism and the political design structure by the powerful nations and how they delineate the structures around economic opportunity for the rest of us, and they take when they want to, and they give who they want to. And so we have many trying to please the king, playing a fool. The court is filled with jesters and people who got their own idea of how to be nice and act and play smart in a Babylon. And that's what's going on. That's what's going on with all these philosophies. So be careful that you're not destroying the environment by thinking like them, right? And forgetting that your food is organic and it comes from seeds, right? Seeds that will produce seeds of its own kind. It's not something you go to buy to that store and you go, you spray this on it, you spray this on it, and then wow, it yields this, and then you go back to the store to get a new set of seeds. No, seeds and seeds that yield after its own self, right? Yeah, because here comes the fruit, seeds from the fruit, more trees come, more fruits. It's continuous. It's the organic cycle. It's a godless cycle. It's a divine cycle. It's the way it's made. It's not the economic cycle. Everything is stratified, designed, codified. Press of a button, perfect lifestyle, perfect mate. Yes, because you got all the he harmony matches. No, he has to speak louder. The way his vocal tonality is designed, and when authority like lion, you roar, and God made your voice to be fainty, squinty, and very sweet to effeminate energy and effeminize, and feminize means soft, sweet, gentle energy. Yeah, like what we'll call transcendental energy. That's why you got that, hallelujah, as a woman. That's why God gave you that. Yeah, to deal with the roaring, thundering man. When you hear that sweet sound, calms his soul. He can't roar against such beauty. You understand if you want to understand. But the adjustments, yeah, is making us act against nature, against God, taking up all these philosophies. Yeah, it's all mechanical. Yeah, it's all synthetic. That's why people are plastic. It's plastic. They're so plastic. They're fantastic. Plastic. It's a plastic. They're they're a plastic in a plastic world. They're so plastic, and it's unfortunate. Climate change versus environmental damage. Don't destroy the environment with carelessness, right? Yeah, a lack of care for nature, lack of care for yourself, lack of care for your lifestyle, for your outcome. Because if you dishonor nature, nature will dishonor you. You do not know where your food comes from. You will not honor your food. You will not honor the soil. You will throw anything that tell you to throw in it and all that stuff. Yeah, when that's not what causes the trees to grow. It's a philosophy that they want to force nature to produce 100 times more than it is naturally designed to produce. You've got to understand that is not what God made, nor is original for the design system. That is the biological, psychological, spiritual organism that we are. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So until next time, this has been a great All the Reasonings right here at the Trail Life. Share, subscribe to the Trail Life experience right here on Trail Life Television Network. Love, light, and blessing. Continue to be wise and prudent.